up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. Parker, we got a game this week or what? Tell us about it, man. Breaking news right as we're going on. I mean, I was like downloading your Zoom link right when we started, and you was like, oh, got breaking news.
Yeah, that's right. 7 p.m. kick between Oklahoma at Baylor right here in Norman at Owen Field. So Baylor obviously coming off the big win over Kansas State that knocked the Wildcats out of contention for the Big 12 championship. So now they come to town hoping to do something similar against Oklahoma. The Sooners, of course, coming off the bye week, if you can call it that, the week where they were supposed to play West Virginia up in Morgantown and had to postpone because of COVID-19. So both teams coming into this game on very interesting notes. It was only Baylor's second win of the season, and of course Oklahoma's fourth open date of the year now.
I'm John Hoover in Tulsa. That's Parker Thune. He is in Norman, confirmed, as he just said. Thanks for listening to the SI Sooners podcast. Thanks for watching, of course, the podcast over on my YouTube channel. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Yes, that part is new. I would invite you guys to check out our redesigned website. Same address, allsooners.com, but the content, you know what? The content's the same too. It's just better. It's just good. But the look of the whole thing, it's got a brand new look, brand new presentation. Check it out, allsooners.com. Also, subscribe to this here podcast so you'll know every time we post a new one. Those post on Sundays and Wednesdays during the football season. So, yeah, we're coming off a COVID date, right? That's an open date created by COVID. Sooners, as Parker mentioned, were supposed to be enjoying the spoils of their fifth conference win in Morgantown. Man, I don't know. I think Oklahoma would have had a heyday. I think they would have had a heck of a time out in Morgantown, especially, nighttime game, a lot of energy in the stadium for 25% capacity. What was the line? Now I'm confused as to what the line was. It opened at 10 and went down to 7, didn't it, Parker? Or was that, am I thinking back to the Oklahoma State game?
I think you're thinking of the Oklahoma State game there. I'm not sure, quite honestly, what the line on the West Virginia game was, just because it was so long. It was on Wednesday that the game was canceled. Yeah. So it's been 4 full days now since we were planning on having a game up in Morgantown.
So we're recording this on Sunday night. It's about, about 10 o'clock? About 9:45. 9:45 is when we started. So the Big 12, they put out a weird announcement last week. This game, the OU Baylor game, that's this week's game, not last week's game, not yesterday's game. That didn't happen. It was set for a 6-day window, right? No big deal. Only the Big 12 announced that all of its games would be set for a 6-day window. As long as I've been doing this, I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm just saying as long as I've been doing this, and me and my faulty memory, I've never seen it happen. I don't remember it happening, where the Big 12 came out on the week before and said, you know what, guys, we don't know who's going to kick off when. We don't know what games are going to be played. We don't know what teams are going to have COVID or not, so we're not going to announce any kickoffs until Sunday. They can only do that like 3 times during the season, so per their television contracts. But they did it with all their games this week. And, it's kind of a blanket announcement. Every game is a 6-day window. Usually they lock down like 3 to 4 in the 11 to 12-day window, 14-day window sometimes, and they'll keep 2 to 3 open. But as of right now, Sunday night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock now. This thing is going to be played 7 o'clock Saturday in Norman on Fox. But I guess just a couple of things you need to know, right? The Sooners need to win, and they're a 23 to 24 point favorite, depending on which house you follow. Parker, you wrote a story today about the Sooners playoff odds, but let's take baby steps here with this one. Why don't you see if you can lay it out for us here at the SI Sooners podcast? Lay it out. Oklahoma is in the driver's seat for one of 2 spots in the Big 12 title game. We know that. They control their own destiny thanks to Kansas State's loss. You mentioned that. Unless what, Parker?
Unless... Well, let's think here, John.
Unless the game's not played. Remember the mathematical formula the Big 12 wants to employ? You have to have a certain percentage. You have to come within 1 full game of the percentage of games, or the average of games, I guess, that the Big 12 plays. So you're supposed to play 9 games, right? Well, if games are canceled and the rest of the league averages 8.5 games, then you'd better play 7. No, that's not right, because that rounds up to 8 to 9. So you'd better play 8 as a minimum. If you only play 7, you don't get to qualify for the Big 12 championship. Am I saying that right? If enough teams cancel and the league average of teams, Big 12 games per team goes down to 8 1/4, then you round that down to 8, and you can get to the championship game by playing 7. Basically, OU's at 8 right now, or 7 right now, right? 5-2. They need to play one of these next 2 games just to ensure, whether it's Baylor or West Virginia, they need to ensure that they have actually played enough games. Kind of like the seat that Ohio State finds itself in, where they haven't played enough to qualify for the Big Ten championship. If they don't play Michigan State, if they don't play Michigan in their final 2 games, they won't have enough games to qualify to get into that mark, to get into the Big Ten championship game. So a little bit of that is going on. The Big 12 amended their tiebreaker rules recently, the last few weeks. And so a little bit of that is going on with the Big 12. It's crazy. OU could still make the championship game, but there's no guarantee that they will, even if they finish with the record that they're at right now, 5-2, 6-2 overall.
Well, yeah, John, and I would imagine with that in mind that Oklahoma is going to do everything in their power to make sure these last 2 games get played, even if it means, like we saw in the opener against Missouri State, being down 20, 25 guys. And I am inclined to believe, based on what we know, that it was Oklahoma's decision and not West Virginia's, or rather it was the Sooners that kind of spurred the decision to postpone the game last week, because we saw in the very same press release that announced that Oklahoma and West Virginia had been postponed, that the Sooners had paused team activities due to COVID-19 positive tests and contact tracing. So the margin for error, or I shouldn't say the margin for error, the leeway, the scheduling leeway is now gone for Oklahoma. They need to play these last 2 games. I guess technically they only need to play one of the 2, or at least you would think. I don't know. It's all very convoluted and all very nuanced how it's going to work out. But the Sooners can make this real easy for all of us, John, if they just keep these 2 games on the schedule and win them both as they're expected to. And if that happens, you get a rematch with Iowa State in Jerry's World on December 19th for the Big 12 title, which I would imagine is the game that just about everybody wants to see right now to decide the Big 12.
Yeah, OU would like to get, and if you're talking about what we're going to talk about next, which is the playoff? You kidding me? Playoff? To get to the playoff, OU needs the best possible resume it can. That means avenging one of its 2 losses, which it did a couple of years ago, remember, when they beat Texas. And in this case, they need Iowa State, which jumped OU this week in the AP Top 25, jumped them from 14 to from 15, I think, to 12. OU moved up 1 spot to number 13, so Iowa State's actually ranked higher than OU, which is fine because they have a better record, and they beat OU. So you want Iowa State looking as good as possible for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee when you beat them in Arlington, right? I mean, that's the formula. That's like a 3-part step to step 1, and that is win the rest of your games and do it pretty convincingly. You wrote a deal about OU in the playoff. I want to say a couple of things about that. The playoff committee chairman said last week, and everybody saw this, that they absolutely noticed that OU is playing much better now than when they lost 2 games at the start of the season, right? They're playing better. They're just kicking everybody's butt. I think I wrote the score of the last 5 games is the average score is 50-22. They're stomping people into a mud hole. The committee also noticed Spencer Rattler's playing like a mature quarterback. He said that. He also noted, he said they noticed the addition of Ramondre Stevenson and Rondé Perkins has made the offense and the defense better. So they're keeping up with these things. They're absolutely keeping Oklahoma in this playoff discussion. The other thing that you guys should know, like I said, Parker wrote a nice piece about it, allsooners.com, about OU's multiple roads that the Sooners can take to get back to the playoff this year. And you can find that where? allsooners.com. You guys need to check that out because there are a lot of possibilities. And I said this in the tweet. There's not a lot of craziness that needs to happen. Like 5 or 6 things need to happen, and they could all pretty much happen. We'll see. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, Tom Herman. Trade Pros Heat and Air in Oklahoma City. Whether you just need service or a mini split for your home office, studio, or man cave, or if you're finally ready to upgrade to a more efficient train system for your entire home, get a free estimate from Trade Pros for all your heating and air needs. Trade Pros earned a Best of 2020 award from Home Advisor and has nothing but 5-star reviews on Google. Go to TradeProsOKC.com or call 405-675-0176 or just book your appointment on Facebook. Trade Pros, that's one word, Trade Pros Heat and Air. Follow SI Sooners on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Find Parker Thune at Parker Thune. That was an easy one. I'm at John E. Hoover. Our website, allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, still part of the Sports Illustrated Network, so that's new. But you know what's not new? All of our content, for now, is still free. No memberships, no subscriptions, no credit cards. And, of course, you can find the video version of this podcast on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. Give us a like, a rate, a comment, and by all means, share us on your social media channels when you can. Parker, how was your Thanksgiving?
Well, John, I teased in our last episode of the podcast that I was going to be enjoying some rhubarb pie over Thanksgiving, and I tell you what, it hit the spot. Big rhubarb guy. But no, I'm going to need to eat nothing but soup for the next 3 days. I was just telling my roommates that because I ate so much food over the holiday weekend. You know, Thanksgiving, obviously, you fill up, but then you got days and days and days worth of leftovers, John. My body's going to need a while to recover.
I got to get the treadmill down and get it plugged in because I ate about 20 million calories over the past few days. Man, I am like physically as stuffed as a human being can be. My son's birthday is coming up this week, and he's going to be 20, so no more teenagers in the Hoover household, but his favorite thing to eat, he identified it tonight, his favorite food on the planet, he said, is my lasagna, which is my mother's lasagna, which is, of course, her mother's lasagna. They came from the old country. And I'm telling you folks, it is a killer OG Italian, Sicilian lasagna recipe. And yes, I can still make it. We did it tonight. The Hoovers stamped out an entire pan of lasagna tonight. This is 3 days after Thanksgiving. So, yeah, we're all pretty stuffed around here. Man, it was good. It was so good. Anyway, Parker, we talked about your piece on the playoff. Let's talk about your piece that you wrote on Tom Herman. No, sorry, let me back up. Thomas Herman III. He just sounds stuffy, doesn't he? You seem to indicate on Twitter, and you touched on it for sure in your story, that Tom Herman is done at Texas. Why do you say that?
Well, you would certainly think so, John, because, you know, the thing about the Longhorn fan base is they don't have a lot of patience for mediocrity. And the reality is, in 3 years, or rather 4 years, 3 full seasons, 1 partial season under Tom Herman, where has this program grown? Where have they taken steps up? Because if they've taken any steps up, they've been infinitesimally incremental, John. This program is comparatively in shambles. You know, Kansas is a program that's in legitimate shambles. But for what the expectation is in Austin, a lot of people are looking at this program and saying, what on earth is going on? Why aren't they winning football games? Texas recruits phenomenally every single year. They have talent. They have no lack of talent. You look at Sam Ehlinger, who's an experienced quarterback in his senior year. They've got the top running back recruit in the nation in Bijan Robinson. Joseph Osai is one of the best defensive players, regardless of position, in the country. They have an outstanding place kicker in Cameron Dicker. There's so much that Tom Herman has to work with, and he can't seem to put a championship caliber team on the field. Not even college football playoff caliber, Big 12 championship caliber. Because in his tenure at Texas, you'll recall, they've only made the Big 12 championship the one time. It was the rematch against Oklahoma, and the Sooners came out on top. Look, Chris Del Conte is going to have some money behind him, and he's going to be facing pressure from those with power within the program or those who donate large sums of money to the program. I would imagine that after Texas's loss on Friday to Iowa State, Del Conte's going to face some pressure to make the move to get Herman out of there because he's on a 5-year contract. It's year 4. he hasn't shown that he can live up to the standard that Lincoln Riley has set up in Norman. And that can't be all that exciting for Longhorns fans. And I doubt that they want to continue to play catch up with Oklahoma for the foreseeable future. And if not now for Herman, when? Because this is Ellinger's senior year. This was supposed to be when it all came together for the Longhorns, and it hasn't. They're 5-3, out of contention for the Big 12 championship. The winds of change are blowing down there in Austin, John. And I think I'm hesitant to say that Herman deserves it. I'm hesitant to say that, okay, he should be on his way out, because to be fair, 4 years is not all that much time to give a guy, especially when you consider what he inherited, the ruins of the Charlie Strong era at Texas, and you consider the fact that he's gone 30-18, which, again, doesn't quite live up to the standard that is expected in Austin, but it's not bad by any means. They've won 3 bowl games under Herman. And so I'm not saying whether or not he should get fired, John, because that's not my purview. That's not at my discretion. But what I can tell you is that I do believe come 2021, there's going to be a new head coach roaming the sidelines in Austin, because Tom Herman's clock has run out. They're beginning to lose patience with him down there.
Yeah, you're right. They don't pay in Austin at a place like Texas. They don't pay for 30-18. They pay for 10-2, if at the minimum 10-2 every year, and you could always count on that out of Mac Brown. You could always count on 10 wins. Beat OU after 2000, starting in 2005. You could beat OU fairly consistently. They did. But you're right, man. There's a couple of factors. There's a couple of kind of X factors at play, obviously, when you talk about firing a coach. Right now, Texas owes Tom Herman $15.4 million in a buyout if they fire him right now. And I know it's Texas. I know the money movers, makers, and shakers. If they want Tom Herman out, they're going to get him out. There's no doubt. But I think it's kind of bad optics throwing bad money after good like that in the middle of a pandemic. When people are being laid off at the university, scores of university employees are being let go and cut and reduced and furloughed and laid off. Now, I understand that those billionaire fans who drive the Texas train, they don't give a crap about who's laid off and who's not. But again, it's bad optics. So that might help save Tom Herman this year. Another thing, Chris Del Conte didn't actually hire Tom Herman. Tom Herman was hired in December 2016. Del Conte came on board December 2017. So you hear that all the time that, oh, well, that's not his guy. He wants to hire his guy. That may be true. He may want to hire his guy, of course. Yeah, sure. But I don't think that's the end all be all. I think Tom Herman and Chris Del Conte get along great. My friend Brian Davis and I, we chat about it from time to time when the opportunity arises. And it doesn't sound like they're at odds or anything. I've met Del Conte. I've interviewed him, sat down one-on-one with him for an extensive period. And he was he's just a gem of a human being. I love that dude. And that would be somebody that you would want Oklahoma to hire if Joe Castiglione ever leaves. I'm just saying. But you see Bob Stoops' name pop up to replace Tom Herman. Guys, that's not happening. Forget it. Put it out of your head. It's not happening. But the other thing is, on this whole scenario is, I don't think they're going to fire Tom Herman. I really don't. I think he's going to get that 5th year next year. But I'll say this. They will fire Tom Herman tomorrow during the Big 12 teleconference, like during his little 10-minute spiel where he's taking questions and giving answers. They will fire him immediately if they have confirmation from Urban Meyer that he wants the job. I mean, Urban Meyer is the dream candidate for everybody, for USC, of course, for Texas. Man, I mean, I don't know if you saw, there was a TCU game. God, I can't remember who they were playing. But they were playing. They came back to the Fox studios on halftime. Fox had the game, and Urban Meyer was in the studio, and he said TCU should be better. They should be better every year. He kind of kicked Gary Patterson in the shins. He said that there's a unlimited supply of recruits right there in your backyard in the DFW, and TCU should have access to them. They should be better every year. And, of course, Gary Patterson was asked about it, and he said, I can't concern myself with what Urban Meyer says. Urban Meyer got out of coaching, which was the ultimate blowback. Was perfect. But Urban won national titles at Florida. He won national titles at Ohio State. Then he stepped away, all these health concerns, whatever. I still don't buy any of that. He is one of those coaches that thinks, without a doubt, that if he steps in Austin, he's not just going to win. He's not just going to win big. He's going to win huge. He's going to contend for the national championship every year. I'm just saying that's what he thinks. Okay. The ego on that guy made Tom Herman look humble. My question is, if Herman does get fired and Del Conte hires Urban Meyer, Parker, how does that change the game in the Big 12? I know Lincoln Riley is 1-0 against old Herb, but long term, how do you think Urban Meyer would change the landscape in the Big 12?
Well, it would create a seismic shift, John, just because think about the fact that the Big 12 hasn't had a coach of that stature, of that magnitude, since maybe Barry Switzer? I mean, Urban Meyer is the name in collegiate coaching. He's the guy. And you mentioned he's won national championships at 2 different schools in the not too distant past. And I think he's the kind of person that everybody expects, yeah, okay, he may say he's retiring, but when's he getting back on the sidelines? We've seen it happen once before when he presumably retired from the gig at Florida, only to come back after the fact and accept the job at Ohio State. Could that happen again at Texas? Absolutely. And look, Urban Meyer said it, or you said it about Urban Meyer, John. The situation that he would be stepping into in Texas would give him an immediate opportunity to contend for national championships, given Texas's reputation, the talent that they have already existing on the roster, and the ability that he would have to go out and recruit, not just under the umbrella of the university's brand, but his own brand that he's cultivated. And so, yes, if there's an opportunity for Texas to bring in Urban Meyer, you can bet that they'll be bringing him in. Because if there's one guy out there that can change the direction of the Texas football program the way everybody expected Tom Herman was going to, you'd have to think it's Urban Meyer, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. He's the dream candidate for Texas because Texas has an ego, has maybe a self-image of its own self that can match that which Urban Meyer does. There would be a match made in, I don't know where it would be made. It would be made in Austin, Texas, I guess. That's all I can come up with. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we got more football coming up, but we got to get to this news. If we were Lon Kruger's basketball team, we would not be off to a good start.
Hey there, loyal listeners. Parker Thune here with SI Sooners. Are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond, or maybe you're just a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter at @all_Sooners.
Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. Okay, OU basketball was supposed to play 2 games last week, right? Instead, they played 0. When those games got wiped out, they were supposed to open the season with Florida this week. Instead, they'll play the Gators next year, we think. That news broke on Twitter this afternoon by CBS Sports' John Rothstein, and then a couple hours later, OU confirmed it. Florida was supposed to come to Norman on Wednesday for a 4 o'clock game, which would have been fun, but instead, COVID. Yeah, which means the Sooners' actual season opener is Sunday against TCU. Yeah, a Big 12 game to start the basketball season. We think. Again, we think. That's what's scheduled. Anyway, Parker, listen, man, I guess everybody's in the same boat, but what do you think? Is this OU roster kind of maybe equipped to open the season against a Big 12 team in Big 12 play? I mean, this team's got a lot of new faces and a lot of new players and a lot of new roles.
Yeah, John, well, the acclimation period no longer exists, right? The non-conference schedule begins with a conference game, oddly enough. And so we're going to get an immediate idea of just how polished and just how deep this Sooners roster actually is, going up against a team in TCU that they beat in the last basketball game that they played, John. If you recall, back in mid-March, just before what would have been the Big 12 tournament, Austin Reeves hit that dramatic jump shot to beat TCU 78-76 in Fort Worth in what was, I believe, the Sooners' largest comeback victory, or maybe it was largest second half comeback victory in program history. But Reeves had 41 points. It was a phenomenal game, and it seemed like the Sooners were building a lot of momentum. Lo and behold, no Big 12 tournament, no March Madness. Here we sit 8 months later, and we haven't seen Oklahoma on the hardwood since. So, going up against the Horned Frogs once again, I'm really interested to see how the Sooners replace Christian Doolittle's production, because he was a guy obviously at 6'7" at the forward position that could score outside, could score inside. He was the most versatile and most dynamic threat on the court for Oklahoma. And you also got the new guys coming into the backcourt, not just Trey Phipps, the freshman, but you think about Mo Gibson, who's been cleared to play, the transfer from North Texas, and they're hoping to get Elijah Harkless, the transfer from California State Northridge. I don't believe, at least from what we know, that he has been cleared to play as of yet. So there's a lot of moving pieces for the Sooners as this season begins. And to be honest, John, and I'll go back to one thing that Sherry Cole said in one of her preseason press conferences. This is something that every program across the country is dealing with on the exact same level and to the exact same degree. They're all having to find their identity amidst a pandemic that has drastically affected the way that they play basketball, the way that they practice, the way that they go about their workout regimens. And so I don't know what to expect, John. I don't think anybody knows what to expect. And it won't be until probably January, February that we get an idea of who the best teams across college basketball and across the Big 12 actually are. And Oklahoma has the potential, I believe, to be right where they've been the last couple seasons. A mid-range seed in the NCAA tournament with potential to go win a couple games, maybe get to a Sweet 16. That potential is certainly there. They've got talent. But it's going to come down to how they gel on the floor. And as we saw with the Oklahoma football team at the beginning of the season, John, sometimes that chemistry takes a little while to get catalyzed and to develop.
Yeah, you use the operative word to me, identity. Identity for the Oklahoma Sooners men's basketball team anyway. I think we know Manick and Reeves, obviously, they're seniors. They're going to be fine. But if you think about it, those guys, even those guys are in a much larger leadership role now, right? They're going to have to take on new responsibilities as the leaders on this team, the elder statesmen. Kirkweth is supposed to take on a larger role. We've heard a lot about him this offseason, preseason. Rick Asanza is a redshirt freshman last year, right? But Kruger's been talking him up. I mean, we're all looking forward to seeing what he can do. More minutes, I would assume, for Victor Iwuakor. Did I say that name right? I always mess that up. Iwuakor is what is Iwuakor. Thank you. Umoja Gibson, obviously, and Elijah Harkless are going to be in their first year, assuming Harkless plays, right? They're going to be in their first year in the program, first year in the Big 12, all right? These guys are stepping up big time in competition. So that's something that could weigh in with how much they play, how they adjust. Trey Phipps, who you mentioned, he could certainly help as a shooter. He's a hell of a shooter, but, man, he's still a true freshman, right? So you expect more on the plate for Alondis Williams in his senior year. I think he averaged 6 points a game last year, so bigger role for him, bigger role for Davion Harmon, probably a bigger role for Jalen Hill. I say probably because, again, we don't know. We don't know what this team's identity about. That's what I can't put my finger on is the identity. We don't know what it is. We don't know really if anyone's role is going to be defined this year. Other than Manick and Reeves, I think they're going to be defined extremely, to kind of a fine point there. But they're going to have to figure it out with a lot of guys, and they're going to have to do that without the benefit of a non-conference schedule. So that could be interesting. Okay, I promised more football, so let's get to more football. OU moved up to number 13 in the AP poll this week. One spot behind Iowa State, as I mentioned, who beat Texas. I think the score was 23-20. That was a great game. I enjoyed the heck out of that game. Friday. But AP poll doesn't matter right now. We know that. They got the CFP rankings out, and OU is number 9 there. Again, if you're number 9 when the first rankings come out, and you basically have 3 games left, you've got a real shot. There needs to be some things happen in front of you, obviously, but you've got a real shot at the playoff. We talked about what the committee thinks about OU. Parker, I got to ask you, if OU finishes strong and there's just that right kind of chaos in front of them, where they're in the discussion for the 4th or 5th spot, who's it going to be? Is OU in there kind of thing? There doesn't have to be a ton of chaos now, okay? Just the right teams have to lose the right week to the right opponents, I guess. Like you laid out so well in your story. Go check it out, allsooners.com. Mathematically, yes, OU can get to the playoff, but as the 4 seed now, listen, you're looking at another semifinal game against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Yeah, I said it before. I said it, I think, last week. OU don't want none of that smoke. OU fans are sounding off. They have, if you go through the comments section, wherever we post our stuff, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, look on our website. There's a lot of people that are saying, a lot of OU fans that are saying, listen, I'm an OU fan. I've been an OU fan all my life. Nah, that's cool. Y'all can have the playoff this year. Alabama, Parker, was unanimous number 1 in the AP poll this week for the 2nd week in a row. This ain't the year for OU to say, hey, if you can't win it if you ain't in it, right? No, I think that would not be a good idea. That would not be a good matchup for Oklahoma. OU Alabama in the playoff, in the semifinal. That might end up looking a whole lot like that LSU game last year. It might. Now, I might change my mind if OU puts the wood to Baylor, West Virginia, and Iowa State. I mean, I think I changed my mind last year at this time too, when I was really thinking, no, they don't want LSU. And then by the time they got there, I was thinking, no, really, honestly, I truly believe this OU team can hang with LSU. That lasted for about 3 possessions, Parker. Where do you stand? Is this OU team playoff or bust? Or is it more, please don't bust in the playoffs again?
John, going back to your comment from last Sunday's podcast, you touched on it. I will reiterate. The Sooners don't want that smoke. Because let's be very clear here. Alabama is the best team in college football, and it's not close. That team is an absolute juggernaut right now. And you can say, okay, well, the Sooners have a really good front 4. Maybe they get pressure on Mac Jones. Maybe they fluster him really for the first time all season and start to expose some of his inexperience and prove that it was just a flash in the pan what he was able to do over the first half of this season. But no, at every single position, Alabama's just a better football team than Oklahoma, and better than every other team in college football. That team, if I had to pick a team to win the national championship right here and now, John, I would pick Alabama 100%, because they don't have any weakness. They don't have any apparent weakness. I don't know that I would like any team's chances going up against Alabama just based on the sheer talent that they have all across the board on both sides of the football. Could Oklahoma hang with Notre Dame? Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Could they hang with Clemson? There's a decent chance. Could they hang with a team like a Cincinnati, a Georgia, a Miami, any of those teams ranked a spot or 2 or 3 higher than them? Yes, most certainly. I think they could hang with Ohio State too. But Alabama's the one team, John, that I don't think anybody wants to play. Not even anybody in the SEC right now. Nobody wants to take on Nick Saban's team with how strong they're playing on both offense and defense. So, if Oklahoma can somehow finagle their way into a playoff matchup with Notre Dame or with Clemson, they say, okay, you take your chances and maybe you get lucky. But you're not getting lucky against Alabama. You're not.
Mac Jones is seen by many national pundits for sure as a Heisman frontrunner, certainly a strong contender. He might be about the 7th or 8th or 9th best player on that offense. That's how good Alabama is this year. It's just not fair. Listen to the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, or on your Amazon-enabled device. Just say, Alexa, please play for me the SI Sooners podcast. She'll do it. She always comes through. Or just go to allsooners.com, click on the player, and listen to your phone, your tablet, your computer, whatever. You can always watch the video version of this podcast on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.